So a year ago today, I lost my dad. And there were a lot of people that were here with me at that time. And there's been some new subscribers along the way. But I made a post back on Father's Day of this year on my blog. And so many people told me that, they wanted to see a video. And frankly, I wasn't strong enough to make the video. And I don't know if I'm strong enough now. But I've had 1 year now to reflect on, what it was like to have a dad. But also like the true cost of like losing a parent and how that's made me feel. And I think I can finally come out and like be a little bit vulnerable, tell you exactly how I feel, and be a light for somebody else that might be going through the same things that I'm going through and that my family's going through this year. All the time I get asked, how you doing? And it's really, really a hard answer to give. You want to tell people that you're doing great and you're hanging in there, but then sometimes you're not. And you also want to give the respect to people that, reach out and see how you're doing. And around the holiday season, it gets really, really intense, which makes this like weird kind of purgatory of a feeling where people like don't want to bring it up because they're not sure where you're at with the coping process, but they also want to say things, but they don't want to ruin the holiday. It's a hard time for people, and it's been really, really difficult for us and interacting with other people because they want to come in and they want to say happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, but they know the elephant in the room is there. And that's I want to kind of like dismiss that and like give you the answer here so you don't have to feel pressure to ask. And the thing that's even more fearful is we're going into the second year. I remember when my mom passed away, I overheard my dad telling somebody that the second year was harder. Kind of like, that second day after you work out, how you're sore the second day. And I think what happens is that first year, it's so fresh in everybody's mind. Everybody's there for you. And over time, those feelings start to go away and not so many people reach out, and not because they don't care, but because there's other things that are new in their mind. And I remember my dad saying that the second year without my mom was really the loneliest. And I'm thinking to myself now, I can't even believe that it could possibly be worse than it was this year. And I kind of want to make this so that I could go back and reflect on it. I wish there was a cliche answer like, I'm doing okay, or I'm hanging in there, and that could just be the end of the story. But I'm not sure that people or even myself can fully grasp what I'm going through on a daily basis, the highs and the lows. And it's hard for people to understand that because everybody copes with things differently. And I titled it The True Cost of Losing a Dad, not because I wanted to bring monetary value to this, but I just wanted to show the value itself and that there are other things besides money out there that give us extreme value. Over the last year since Dad's been gone and the 10 years since Mom's been gone, if there's one thing I've really learned is that sadness is really the least of my worries. The cost of losing a parent far exceeds sadness. It's also the easiest to get over because we can get over sadness with distractions and going on vacation and being around friends. Like, I can cover sadness pretty easily, but the true feelings of pain are buried deep inside me, and these are the hard things for me to overcome. When my mom passed, really sadness was the really big factor, and I feel like that was why I was so easily able to move on after my mom passed away. I was young, I was traveling, I was doing new adventures, and I really hid all of those deep down feelings by just looking at it in terms of sadness. And in those last 10 years since losing Mom, I've had some really, really bad moments, but overall, I've been pretty good. And I expected the same with Dad. I thought I'd be pretty good. I mean, we knew he was sick. We got to spend as much time with him as we could in the end. He got to meet my daughter and his granddaughter and spend 10 wonderful months with her. Like, I thought I was going to be ready for this. I thought it would be like losing Mom. I would keep myself distracted and move on. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. And I couldn't really put my finger on why they were so different until recently. The thing that's been destroying me is the loss of unconditional love. I always knew what the term unconditional love meant, but I never knew how it felt until now. I never knew how much I emotionally leaned on my father and all the things that he put up with raising me. His unconditional love for me was so great, I never even realized it. And I never truly understood, the relationship between a parent and their child. Here are some examples of those moments of unconditional love that I never really realized that I wish I could go back and just tell him about now. Dad, I'm sorry for always venting to you. My dad, he was my go-to listener. Looking back over the years, I cannot fathom how much ridiculous, unimportant things that he couldn't care less about, all these things that I came to him and just complained about. For as long as I can remember, if something was going wrong in my life, I just called Dad. There are some things that you just can't talk to your spouse or your friends about, and sometimes you want to talk about your spouse and your friends. And sometimes you need to talk about the crazy family. Like, you can't call your buddy up and talk about your crazy aunt. That would be ridiculous. And all of these things, they always fell on Dad's shoulders. And sometimes I felt really embarrassed to tell my friends about things, and sometimes the things I did were just flat out embarrassing. And there's a little irony here with the YouTube channel. One of those things was student loans. I used to call him up all the time and tell him how much they were ruining my life. And I remember over and over again over the years, he would say, Brad, stay true, keep paying the minimums. One day I'm going to help you. I don't know when it is. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but one day I'll help you. I promise. And, that's like when I made that video about the $61,000 student loan payment. That's why I put his entire inheritance on my student loans. That was his wishes, and why it stings so much when people say, like, I got lucky because I got inheritance and my debt-free journey was easier. Like, that was his wish. He didn't know that it would come to me and he'd help me with my student loans in the form of an inheritance. But, that's why I spent all the money, and that's why I took every dollar he gave me. And, I hope that when I see him again one day, he'll be like, thanks for not going on a big vacation, and, thanks for putting them towards student loans, because now I see, even since that payment has been made, getting rid of those debts has changed my life more than any other way I could have spent that money. My dad really was an incredible listener, and there may be people out there that will listen to what you have to say, but there are very, very few people out there that will listen to anything you say, anytime you say it, about any possible thing, even if they couldn't care less about it. And that type of listener only comes around with unconditional love. My dad has got me out of so many jams before. He has bailed me out so many times, literally and figuratively. There must have been so many times in life where I just made him so ashamed, but I would never know him because he never showed it. When you're young and you're dumb, you don't really understand how your actions can really affect others. And looking back, yeah, there must have been some hard times for him. We get lost in our own selfish emotions. And I have one story in particular that's in the front of my mind that really shows the difference between my mom and my dad. When I was 21 years old, I got arrested for trespassing on somebody else's property. And trust me, it's not that exciting. Essentially, there was like a shortcut back through someone's backyard, back to the dorms, easy. So we took them there. I told you it was boring, nothing crazy. But I got in trouble. I got locked up. The landlord of that property had been fed up with kids, I got arrested. All right, so how does this relate to my dad? Well, for this infraction, I needed to appear in front of the judge, and they told me that I would need to have somebody or some representation, somebody that could vouch for my character. And at this time, I didn't know anything about lawyers. I called my dad. It was about a 5-hour trip for him. He told me that he'd be there in the morning, no questions asked. Hung up the phone, and that was that. He showed up earlier than expected. As usual, I can't even imagine what time he left the house. And we met at the courthouse, and we went in. We stood in front of the judge. When he got out of the car, I couldn't put a finger on what his look was telling me. He had such a good poker face. It was just look between hey Brad, great to see you, good morning, and I'm going to kill you. The tension that I felt with him was just it was so unbearable at the time. We stood in front of the judge. He spoke really, really kindly of me, and told me that this was not the way that he was raised, and he asked the judge if he could please dish out the punishment instead of the court. And I'm pretty sure that was one of the first times I peed my pants as an adult. The judge gave me a small fine, let my dad dish out the punishment, and he sent me on my way. And I was a college student. I had $1.63 to my name. Dad paid the fine, no questions asked. Didn't even ask me if I had money. Just walked up to the cashier, paid the fine. And I never even paid him back for that. I never even thought to, and that's because I was a selfish asshole. And that fine, he came back and he yelled at me 15 years later about something I said to him. And that's a story for another time and place. You ever catch me at the bonfire, you can ask me about that story. But yeah, I never even paid him back. So we exit the courthouse, and I'm thinking this verbal assault is coming. That she still has his poker face on. I'm like, oh man, here it comes. And he goes to speak, and I'm grasping on any word that he possibly could say. And he says, hey, where can we get breakfast? Now, I'd been arrested. He had to drive up here, paid my fine. Now he's asking me for breakfast. Like, I knew there was a hoax, but yeah, I played along, and we went, and we sat down, and we had breakfast. We sat, we had small talk, like nothing had ever happened. At the end of the meal, he's like, hey, do you want to ride back to your house? I said, sure. And, we pulled up in front of the house, and still, I'm waiting. Like, he was, the suspense was absolutely killing me. And we did our casual goodbyes, and he was about to leave. I had to clear the air. I had to know exactly what he was thinking. I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but it had to be something along the lines of like, hey, Dad, why haven't you beaten the crap out of me yet? Or, why aren't I in trouble? Or something like that. And he kind of looked offended that I asked him, like, why he wasn't in trouble. Like, why would you be in trouble? And then he said something to me that it changed the course of my life from that day moving forward. And he really put something into perspective. And I want to read it right from the blog because it's intense. And I don't want to miss anything. He said, Brad, we all make mistakes. Some are big, some are small. We do dumb things that we will always regret. I have, and you have it, and you will as well. I'm not mad at you for this, and frankly, I'm not even disappointed. If you look back at our time together, there have only been two types of situations in which you've seen me angry with you to the point of discipline. Number one, when you didn't learn a lesson from the stupid things that you had done. Like I said, we are all going to do pretty stupid things in our life, but our failures and our mistakes are learning opportunities. They can be used for good. Granted, if I have to bail you out for trespassing on other people's properties again, you can be assured that I am going to be very, very angry with you. But I will never be angry with you for making mistakes and failing. The other time is when you made your mother so mad that she yelled at me for something that you had done. Keep me out of trouble with your mother, and you'll be fine with me. The way I see it, don't trespass again, keep on learning from your mistakes, and don't tell your mother about this, and we're good. P.S. I told your mother I was playing golf today. So if she asks you about me, play along. Tell her you heard I was with the railroad guys. He was so right. He never attacked me for failures or mistakes, and he only came after me when I made excuses, and when I wasn't honest with him, and when I didn't learn from my mistakes, or made my mom really angry. This is advice that I've taken with me, and now I get to utilize with my own kids. It showed me a ton about his character. He accepted people for who they were, and not the things that they did. You always got a second chance with my father, very rarely a third, but you always got a second chance. There's so many times like this where I look back now, and I thought he was gonna kill me, and he really didn't. And as far as I know, my mother went to the grave, and she never knew about that trespassing story. And I've never trespassed on anybody else's properties without their permission. Not too many people will just bail you out over and over and over and over again. Like, that type of person only comes with unconditional love. My dad was my biggest fan, and this is going to be the hardest part for me to get through. I apologize. I don't think I ever realized how much I sought my dad's approval. I mean, as a man, there's really nothing better in this world than hearing Dad say that he's proud of you. And I think about all the times he probably felt it and he didn't say it, and wow. And it didn't always need to be serious things like academics. It could be like the stupidest things that I know I just made him so proud. He was always the most proud about personal growth and, seeing me develop as a young man, and, back to that kindness piece, and back to that, like, learning from your mistakes and learning from failures. Those were the things he seemed to be most proud of. In 2009, I completed the Ironman in Arizona, and we went to this burger place called Heart Attack Grill after, and they had this eating challenge, and you had to eat this huge, it was a disgusting cheeseburger. It was so big, and I knew that I was going to try and eat it, and I was a pretty good eater at the time, and I was super hungry after the Ironman. I remember when the burger came out, he kind of gave me a look like, no shot. And I don't know if he believed I could do it, but I don't know if it was no shot or like, please do not eat that burger. And to the table's surprise and everybody else in the restaurant, my little 165-pound self, I ate this quadruple bypass burger. People were dumbfounded. It was hilarious. Even the waitress, who had been working there for months, was like, I've seen so many people try it, and I've never seen anybody finish it before. And we were all laughing about it, and I just looked at my dad kind of across the table. He looked at me Like, that's my boy. And even things as stupid as eating a really big cheeseburger, like, we still had those moments. Like, I did the Ironman triathlon the day before, and he kind of like gave me a high five and a hug, and I think he was more proud of the cheeseburger. And this having someone to like seek the approval of, or having somebody that you wanted to make proud, that's something that I've really lost in the last year. Something that's been really hard for me to cope with. I'm finding it really hard to like push myself, like to set new goals and like reach new heights. It's been hard. I feel like I'm at like the peak of my potential, and like everything I ever did was like to make dad proud. And yeah, it's cool and all. People like, your dad would be so proud of you. Like, okay. Yeah, like, that's all great and all, but it's not the same. Now that he's not here, I feel like I have like no one really to look up to. I don't have really anybody that I aspire to be. And as somebody that's like, that loves like making people happy, and like I just feel a little bit lost. And I find myself latching onto people that I really admire, young and old, and I feel like sometimes it's hard for them to like understand like what role they're playing with me in the relationship. You know, like I got the younger kids that I look up to because they have so much in front of them, and I have a lot of like older friends too that are a lot like father figures to me, and sometimes I feel bad for them. Like I put a lot of heavy stuff on them, and that's not really fair. There's only so much that you can put on your friends and, you know, your spouse and your brothers. It's your coworkers. Like there's so many people. Sometimes I have to like preface texts with like, hey, sorry, you're gonna have to be a dad for a second. And it's hard for people. I want to make people proud, and even furthermore, I want to go around and I want to thank the people that like make my life better. Like that's my goal. Like so many people have helped me. I want to help. I want to give. It's part of like this YouTube channel. Like I just feel this endless need to like help people that have helped me through my good times and my bad. Like I said, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel lost. Like there's only so long that I can go on being self-motivated. Like I'm not that type of person. I know what I can accomplish. I know what my limitations are. I'm like the type of person that needs to go to the gym to work out because I can't push myself that hard in the driveway. Like my wife, she can go full gas in the driveway with nobody watching. Like I'm the type of person that always goes a little bit harder when I know people are there to watch. Is that a weakness? I don't know. It's just kind of like who I am. And like, don't get it confused. Like I don't need people there clapping for me every single time that I win, but when for 37 years, you have somebody clapping every single time you do win, and then that clapping goes away, you notice that silence. And that silence, that's hard for me. A day-to-day struggle for me is like looking over at the sidelines and looking for dad, and he's just not there. I still need a team captain. I still need a coach. You know, I still need somebody to help me. There's just so many things that I'm not ready to do on my own yet. And now as a father, I'm like, well, you kind of got to figure it out, bro. I remember my dad coached me in Little League, and I wanted to be a pitcher. And I sucked at pitching. I sucked. And every single time there was a lopsided game, Dad would find a way to get me in. You know, like, give him one more shot. Today, maybe he'll do better. But, you know, I'm sure he knew that it wasn't going to go well. It was going to be a bloodbath out there. But he kept putting me in, even though he knew how much I sucked at pitching. It must have made him want to put his, head in his shell every single time I begged to pitch, because he knew the bloodbath that was going to happen. And I think it takes a certain type of person to stand tall and cheer for you, even when you suck, and even when you know that all the people behind you know your kids suck, and you just do it anyway. I feel like that type of fan only comes with unconditional love. When it comes to parenting, I mean, it's so cliche. We say our whole lives that, we don't want to end up like our parents. And for most of us, that's 100% not true. We're all going to become our parents. I knew that I would eventually turn into them, but the one thing that I didn't realize is that I would never get to sit down with him and live it, and sit on the couch and laugh about it and have him be like, I told you you'd be just like me, or, call him up and say things like, Dad, you would not believe what I just said to Avery. I sounded just like you. I didn't think that he wouldn't be here. I was so blessed that he got to meet Avery. 10 months, it was good, and there were times where I would like take pictures of her, and I never wanted to be that guy that like sent pictures to all their friends, even though and like had them pretend like they were gonna care, like, oh great, Brad's kid stood up, like, but you could always send those pictures to Dad, and I think knowing at the end that he knew that there weren't gonna be many pictures left, like, he loved them. He asked for him every day, stupid things like, can you send me a picture of Avery? I'm like, Dad, she's sitting on the couch. He's like, perfect, send it. At 5 o'clock in the morning once, I chopped Avery's thumb off with the nail clipper, and blood was squirting everywhere. It was the first time I'd seen blood, and she was crying, and her thumb was so small I couldn't apply pressure, and it was terrible. I was sick to my stomach. Tyra was keeping it together, and like I just went to call Dad, and he wasn't there. It was brutal, and thank God we had Tyra's parents around, but like those instincts of like, call Dad, he'll make it better, not there. That's tough. It's tough. I was like, said once again, like left on an island. Like my daughter's finger is, I don't know if it's on or off, and it wasn't there. And Dad, he was so stern but so fair, and he really brought out the best in me, and sometimes he brought out the worst in me. And as a mama's boy, that caused a lot of conflict between him and I. Whenever I sought the path of least resistance, I would just hide behind my mom, and she would defend me against that. And then when I'd have my arguments with Mom, I would run to Dad. I was playing two sides of the fence, and I know that's part of being a kid, but it's hard looking back and not being able to tell him that, like, I understand, that I played both sides of the fence. It caused so many arguments between my mom and my dad, too, and now looking back, my dad was usually right. Like, I should have been mowing the lawn. I should have been doing more around the house and chores and things like that. And my mom always protected me and said, I'm a kid, blah, blah, blah. And he always was like, tried to instill work ethic in me. And I just avoided it. I sought the path of least resistance. But I realize now that probably one day I'm going to push those same morals and that same work ethic on my kids. And some of those might be a losing battle. But the good thing that I know now is, hopefully when they get older, they'll understand like why I did it and why I tried to instill those values. And this is the thing that makes this whole story truly remarkable and really shows, my dad's character. Jerry Finn is not my biological father. At a little over 30 years of age, he decided to drastically change his life and bring in my mom and I and drastically change our life for the better. And as somebody that just passed their early 30s, I don't know how the hell he did that. He did everything for me, no questions asked, and he never did anything in my entire life but make me feel loved. People are always so shocked when I tell them that he's not my biological father, and it usually comes up because my middle brother is Gerard Finn Jr., and they're always like, well, why aren't you Junior? And, people are shocked because you could not have treated me more like a son than he did. And one of my biggest regrets in my entire life is I used that against him when I was a kid. You're not my real dad was shouted from my mouth more times than I'd ever care to admit. Makes me sick to my stomach to think about. I used that phrase as a defense because I knew it hurt him, or I thought it hurt him. But now being at the same age as he was when I was saying those things to him, one of the biggest regrets my whole life, how I must have made him feel. And he took it so well. He never lashed out. He never defended himself. He always just kept that same poker face. But I know that it probably broke him inside every time I said that. I hate myself so much for saying those things, but I've learned from them, There's that. I've learned from him. He led by example, and he showed a real true example, the difference between father and dad. And if you've taken in somebody, if you're a step parent, foster parent, just know, like, this is the impact you could have on somebody else. Not too many people can take in a woman known as Crazy Mary and her 2-year-old crazy son, but, he did. And I think that type of character only comes around with unconditional love. Here's the last lesson that my dad taught me. Maybe there'll be more that I'll learn about, but this one's a big one. I've been to more funeral and wake services than I care to talk about. I've lost friends, siblings, both my parents, grandparents, a lot. And when kids pass away, there's always a huge service and an outpouring from the community because generally a kid's death is so tragic. It's terrible. And I saw that when my brother Dominic passed away. But as you get older, things diminish. And I think all of our goals is to live to 150 where we don't know anybody else and we can have a 1-hour service for the 3 people that know us. And, we could go off the pasture and that's great. And I didn't consider my dad old. He was 65, but he definitely wasn't young either. He wasn't a kid. And we have a pretty large family. I've heard the tale of Finnegan's Wake. I knew that there would be a good turnout for my dad. But he passed away the week of Thanksgiving. I knew that it would be so hard for friends and family members to fly in, to be here for the services. Not because they didn't want to, but because it was frankly outside of their means. And there were people that just couldn't make it. We understood, but it was Thanksgiving week. Could you imagine having to fly out on Black Friday to New York if you lived on the West Coast? We knew that. But the turnout for my dad's wake, like I said, one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned. Here's why. People came out of the woodworks. People came from literally all over the world. People that he hadn't even seen since the 80s. People that I'd only heard about in stories. People that he played soft toss softball with in his 20s. And people that he mentored on the railroad or just worked with that he hadn't seen in decades. Even people that he had tiffs and arguments with over the years that he hadn't spoken to. Even those people showed up. I kept saying to myself and to my brothers, like, what the hell are all these people doing here? I finally was introduced to one of his, his high school friends. I said, like, dude, thanks for being here, but you came a long way. You could have just sent a card. Like, thank you, but what the hell are you doing here? And him, along with so many other people, gave the exact same response. Respect. I got lost to what an amazing man he was because he was my father. He was dad. I didn't know him as Jerry Finn. I just knew him as dad. But he was so kind to people. He was so unselfish. He put the well-being of other people before himself always. And I saw it time and time again. He always put himself second. And he did that literally to the day he died. One of the last lucid conversations I remember having with him was about the date. All day long, he kept saying, what day is today? What day is today? What day is it? And this was a guy who periodically over the last couple of days before, didn't know what year it was, didn't know where he was, didn't know anything, was telling the nurse, oh yeah, it's 1986, with full confidence, but all day, what's the date? What's the date? What's today's date? I was getting frustrated, Dad, calm down about the date, man. You're in your final days and all you care about is what day it is. Be happy, be comfortable. I just couldn't understand it. You're heavily medicated, you should be being comfortable. Why do you care what the date is? I finally was like, Dad, what's with the date, man? Who cares? He said, because today is my sister's birthday. And I'm not dying on my sister's birthday. Even in his final moments, all he cared about was that it was his sister's birthday and that he had to fight and be strong even just for one more day. So he didn't die on his sister's birthday. And he did. He died the next day. So what lesson did I learn, from the wake and from that moment? It was that I don't think that at that time I could say all the same things about myself. I learned that in my life, there's been more times than not where I was more of an asshole than I needed to be. And there's been times where I saw it and I didn't care about changing. I just chalked it up to I was who I was. But I had the choice. I didn't really see a reason to change, but I could have been more kind to people. I could have treated people with more respect and been more understanding to what people were going through in the situations in their own lives. At that time, and even now, if I hadn't made some changes, I don't think people would have flocked in 2 days after Thanksgiving to see me. And the size of the wake doesn't matter. I haven't changed my life and the way I treat people over the last year because I want a big wake. And my dad definitely didn't treat people kindly because he wanted a big wake either. It was more of realizing that impact that you can make on other people's lives without even really trying that hard. Kindness is easy. Respect is easy. And it will make people's lives so much better. when given the chance between kindness and being a jerk, kindness is always going to get you and everybody else around you further. His kindness and respect comes with unconditional love, and it is something that I've made my life's mission to strive for. Thank you for letting me paint a little picture of like what I've gone through, and I hope that, you know, if you're in the same shoes as me, I was able to bring you a little strength. This took me almost 2 hours, 2.5 hours to film, and I feel better and worse. I hope that you're being strong and you're coping with your ups and your downs just like I am. It's okay to feel alone. Look around. There's people around you that are there for you, I promise. And if there isn't, I'm there for you. So now you guys know why I end my videos with this. Stay positive. Work really hard. Always be kind to other people. I hope you have yourself an amazing day, a better tomorrow, and happy Thanksgiving.